One of the most interesting questions a child can ask is why is the world the way it is? And when you pay attention to this question, why is the world as it is? For example, colors, right? Why is color this and not anything else, for example? Or it would be why does cold feel cold? Like whatever we call cold, right? Whatever the sound cold symbolizes, right? And the idea about that is, can we ever perceive things for what they are? So this would be a really good question, right? Like yellow color is yellow, or is yellow something it appears to be yellow, right? Every single wavelength is absorbed by the object, and then a particular wavelength reaches our eyes, and then it appears to be yellow, or blue, or pink, or green, or mehndi color, right? And it is not just about the attributes we call objective attributes, even about like subjective attributes, right? Like anger, like okay, I see that person's face and that person's face seems angry to me. Somebody else would look at the same face and be like, it's not anger, it may be just a quiet person. So what you notice is that somebody has the same stimulus, the same person, but they have different interpretations. We also look at like when a group of people goes somewhere and they have had pretty much allegedly the same experience. They went to the same place, they had the same thing, whatever. They come home and you ask them to like give a report of what happened, they are going to have five different perspectives. So it really makes you think like, okay, if five people are interacting with one stimulus, is it really one stimulus? You know what I mean? Or is it like five versions of that one objective stimulus or the product that is out there? So here's one thing which is very cool. Immanuel Kant came up with the concept of thing in itself. The thing in itself would be if there is a fridge in front of me, or there is this water, whatever, right? That thing is there. Everybody knows how, because we can see it, we can touch it, we can interact with it, so it exists, right? We all agree. You can see it on video, it agrees. You have no idea if it's edited, no idea, but it is there. We will believe that it is. And so क्या बोल रहा था मैं क्या बोल रहा था मैं Let's go back, okay? I don't remember what I was saying. But then you take five people, you make them interact with the same stimulus, they will have five different versions of that same stimulus. So what we can say is that that stimulus can never be perceived as it is. Oh, I was talking about Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant talked about a thing in itself. And he said the thing in itself is like just this bottle, right? Whatever it is, free of our all interpretations, yeah, our subjectivity. That is what this thing is, right? The thing in itself, when you really think about like the thing in itself, you can never perceive the thing in itself. You just can't. It is something which is beyond our comprehension, is it not? For example, again, you look at this bottle and it just seems like an image. Just imagine like the light falls on that and the light comes back to our eyes. That's why we can see it. We can touch it because we have our senses. But the thing in itself, as it actually is, there is no idea about that. It's an interpretation, right? Another quote by Nietzsche where he said that there are all facts, there are no facts, only interpretations. That's also a cool thing. Yeah, no facts, no cap. I have no cap, but I'm losing my hair, so I should wear cap. But I will never wear cap because I'm no cap. So everything is an interpretation. So when everything is an interpretation and there are no facts, then even like facts are also interpretation. Like let me tell you how facts are also interpretation. If we are saying that one thing is more accurate than the other, one set of facts or one set of data is more accurate than the other, what is deciding it is more accurate than the other? Our interaction with this objective world, right? But that instinct to at first search for a more accurate thing and put higher value on a more accurate thing, that is something which is instinctual. That is something we call it's based on what we call a priori knowledge. A priori knowledge will be some knowledge that you are just born with, something you do not accumulate. That is something you just are thrown into the world and you already have that shit in your head, right? Because we want that. We want accuracy. Why? Because it helps us survive, or it helps us thrive, or it actually helps us to interact with this objective world. in a better way. But it's a priori knowledge. It's based on your interpretation, right? Because what is objectivity if not shared subjectivity, right? If Delhi exists as a city, why does it exist? Because all of the people who have experienced Delhi, in their subjectivity, collective subjectivity, there is an agreement that there is such a place, that the sound Delhi, या दिल्ली, या नई दिल्ली, या फिर capital of India, right? Whatever, these sounds show that, these sounds reflect, and then people see and then go like, well, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But do they? Or it's a version of what you have said, compressed, goes to their mind, and it decompresses, and then it interacts with their psyche, so they make sense of what you're saying. And so, if objects can never be perceived for what they are, what should we do about that? And what should we do with this information that objects can never be perceived for exactly what they are? The thing in itself, for example, can never be perceived, but things can be perceived as a means to an end. So there would be like, means is like a tunnel that leads you to an end, right? There are some faults with this means to an end idea, but it's for a later thing. Right now we are talking about objects as what they are, and like, what's the use of this information? Here's what's the use of this information and how it actually helps us. How can not being able to see a thing for exactly what it is actually a cool thing that we human beings have developed. So what it is, you see things as potential, that is it. You see things as all they can be. So there is a stimulus. That stimulus can be anything, because it is, subjective. How you perceive your things, how you perceive that stimulus is going to be subjective. So when it can be subjective, it can be anything. It can be anything. It can go to any lens of good, or whatever we call good, or it can go to any lens of what we might call bad. Think about the problem of anxiety, for example. And I make the same point again and again, but I can, because we are not as big, so I can just go. And even if we were, I would still go. Sorry for derailing a little bit. I'm on a lot of caffeine. So seeing things as potential is actually a beautiful thing. Why? Because seeing things as potential gives you this weird conscious control on your psyche. Now how does that happen? How seeing things for potential can actually give you some kind of conscious control over your shit? So first of all, when we see things as potential, we gotta go a little fundamental, we gotta go a little deeper, and we have to think that, okay, the world is not as it appears, the world is as we are unfolding while we interact with it, right? Imagine like some kind of ultimate universal projection that we do from our psyche into this world. Let me give you an example, an empirical example. There was a research done, and then there was a research done on two groups of people, and one group of people were made to smell armpit sweat of somebody who just jumped from skydiving, right? So somebody who did skydiving, they took their sweat and they made this one group of people smell it. The second group of people, they were given the sweat of somebody who worked out at a gym. Not that things worked out and they started sweating, but they people were sent to gym, they worked out, and their sweat was made to smell by this second group of people. Then both of these groups were shown neutral images, neutral facial reactions, and they were asked, okay, what do you think is going on, and what is your interpretation of their facial expressions? Before that, they were asked like, okay, do you experience any kind of fear? And they said, no, we don't. But then put fMRI on their heads, and we could see that, amygdala was shooting a little bit in the people who smelled the skydiving sweat. And so, yeah, people who smelled the skydiving sweat reported that the neutral faces looked aggressive or threatening. But the other group of people who smelled the workout sweat were like, all right, this is just pretty neutral. That shows that even if you do not experience fear, for example, but your amygdala is kind of going crazy, and it shapes the way your reality is. Because if your amygdala is going crazy, something is up, some kind of war is about to begin. And then when your body thinks that some kind of war is about to begin, the whole perception changes to that shit. The whole perception. Your amygdala is crazy. Now suddenly everything is threatening. A neutral face is threatening. So this thing happens with us. And that shows that our perception is not really what it is. But our perception is, I mean, this is what I think. Our perception is an extension of our body's state. But then the way your psyche is interpreting things, it also leads to changes in your body. So, like these narratives we have towards ourselves, right? Because we live in a movie, we live in a big fiction where I, the sense of self, is the central character, and there are a lot of semi autobiographical memories, not semi actually, autobiographical memories that we have around. And so we can make sense and we can make a map for ourselves as to, like, okay, this is what I think about myself, these are my experiences, these are my labels I put on myself. And because of these labels, I can decide what I should do in my life. Otherwise, there would be like no pattern to follow. You do realize that having that I there, that is what causes a lot of problems. Common idea. But having that I also gives you structure, and that is what we should not forget. Because there is a sense of self, and there is a self. Because there is an instinct of I, which is very universal. So it's like an archetype, right? The way anima is an archetype or shadow is an archetype. So it is also an archetype, the self, right? I mean, not the Jungian self. Jungian self is like a collection of collective, personal, unconscious, and then the conscious, like the whole deal. That is what self is according to him. But the self I'm talking about is more like the ego Jung talked about. Ego is like the center of consciousness. So the I instinct, that is what ego is, according to him. So coming back to when we go out and we see what we call the world is actually us. And we always unfold when we interact with it. But we are interacting with ourselves. It's always our bodies. It's always our bodies that have created this subjective realm as well. And we live in that. So when we see things as potential, that gives us this thing that, okay, this thing can be option number one, or this thing can be option number B. Option number one and option number B. And then we look at, you know, how can, like, option A can be achieved and not option B. And so it would be based on our action, it would be based on our procedural memory. Because here's the thing, when our body is the, I mean, I like to see our body as all there is, and the subjectivity as an expression of it or an extension of it. um our body is guiding us through stuff, and we are not our body. Okay, we are the center of consciousness, we are not our body, but we can guide our body to good shit. I mean, some basic stuff, first of all, right? Taking care of your body, right? That would be a good thing. Managing your hormones, for example, working out, putting your body through some shit. But then the I should also figure out its mental health shit, because it's a cycle, right? Your physical body leads to your mental states, and then your mental states lead to your physical body. So that is where, like, the first touch of conscious control is. First touch that you can develop willpower through that shit, because you can develop willpower by giving yourself more evidence that you can do things irregardless. That is what will is, right? And you can do that shit. Just wake up and do things, force yourself to do things. That is the only way that pretty much really, really works. Just give yourself a lot of evidence for things that you want, right? So if you'll be like option A, okay, I want to go to option A, I want option A, and I don't want option B. You got to figure out the patterns that lead your semi autobiographical I to that space, which will be called a good option, which will be option A. It brings conscious control, because you are not seeing things for key. Okay, if this is what it is what it is. And if a thing is what it is, then there is no change that can really happen. But when you see things as potential, because you already do see things as potential, that is how human beings are. We just see things for potential. We have just deluded ourselves into believing that we don't. We have deluded ourselves to believe that, okay, this is A and that is it. But then that A changes. But when that A changes, we look at that A again and we go, oh, it is A. But it's not A, it's a version of A. It has changed, and everything changes. Like, change is inevitable. Anna, change is inevitable. Change is very, very inevitable. but we see that change. आवाज नहीं आएगी तेरी. That's why we don't even have to be okay with change. We just have to see that things change. So that's why we see things as potential and things can change. And then when you think about those options, you can move towards a goal, or you can move towards option A that you want and option B that you don't. And then you have to get your willpower because you're going to do things irregardless. Irregardless. That this is the type of strength seeing things as potential gives you, because then you understand that, okay, the narratives I have in my fucking head, they are also liable to change. And you can pretty much choose your shit, and you can also change that thing. You can more of like edit your semi autobiography, not even semi. You can edit your biography by providing sheer evidence for things. Sheer evidence, because you believe in that biography because of other evidence, right? But then you gotta just go, and you gotta also see that you are not your body, because your body has created you pretty much, right? Like you are more or less the center of consciousness. You are the one that is aware, right? So if you are the one that is aware, fundamentally it's your body because it's an extension of it, but then things can be different from that extensions. So you're not your body, you're beyond that. And when you interact with the world, and your psyche is unfolding, you can see it the way you are interpreting the thing, so you can more or less say that you are the interpreter and you are also the interpretation, because those interpretations that come out, what is it? The fiber of those interpretations is your mind decompressing. That is what it is. And that gives you this kind of control over what can be done. That gives you control over that. When you give evidence and you gotta go with things, it just kind of brings a lot of things into perspective. It becomes chill, because when you have that, then you're gonna do something. And it provides this one type of strength, really, because the strength of conscious control is a beautiful strength. It's a beautiful strength. It can lower your neuroticism. It can increase your conscientiousness. You know what I'm saying? And these two things are something great to aim for. So here's the deal, right? What will be the summary of this video? The summary will simply be that things are not rigid, things are not cement, things are elastic, things change, and we always perceive things in potential. We don't perceive things as concrete. So if we are deluding ourselves into believing that things are concrete, that is when a lot of problems arise. Because when we see something is bad, for example, when we see something is bad and we believe that it's rigid, yeah, that's not a great place to be in. When we see something is good and we believe that it is just good, it is what it is, not a good place again, because then you can be deluded by some shit. So it's all about like, okay, yeah, you don't even have to be fine with change. You know what I'm saying? But in the deeper level, you gotta just see things as change, see things as potential. Oh, what can this be? What can this be? That's the message of the video.